أسلمت لك يا إله الكون قد أسلمت لك يا إله الكون قد أسلمت لك رب فاغفر زلتي ما أحكمك أبتغيها مدحة طاغية تبهر البدر بليل.
يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون.
The title of our presentation this evening is The Purpose of Life. And in spite of the fact that I've sort of delivered this presentation in some 37 countries and perhaps maybe 146 cities around the world, I'm always very surprised to find that when I meet people on a plane or a train or standing on a bus stop or in a lunch counter or just in some other type of a situation where I meet someone in my home or I meet someone in their home or an office and another human being, and we're talking about different things, and some way I navigate myself to ask that person the question, what do you think about life? And the person says, well, what do you mean by that? I said, life. Well, what do you think about it? What do you think the meaning is? What do you think the purpose is? And you'll be surprised that intellectual people, educated people, religious people, opinionated people, arrogant people, rich people, white people, black people, Americans, British, Australians, Spanish, Germans, French, heads of state, diplomats, athletes, celebrities, people whom you would think should have some kind of grip or have come to some kind of determination about this very simple question. I asked them, well, what do you think is the purpose of life? And suddenly there's a silence. There's a hesitation. The person is not forthright. And I always remind myself, and I always remind the person that this is not a religious question. It's not a philosophical question. It's not a dialectical question. It's not a tricky question. It's a very simple, straightforward question. And if you haven't answered it, if you haven't reconciled it within yourself, if your set of values, you haven't reconciled that question for yourself to be able to answer it straightforward, like you would if I asked you your name, then there's a problem. And you just think about that problem, you need to work it out. Because every human being needs to answer that question, at least for themselves. And they need to answer it objectively, not just subjectively, as it applies to me, my opinion. What do you think is the purpose of life for all human beings? Because when human beings start to think about that question, it's an all-inclusive question. And you can't just ask that question for yourself, because there are others involved in life. And when you start to think about others, other places, other people, other situations, other ideas, when you start to think about the world as it is, not the world as you think it is, you start to change a little bit yourself. You start to move outside of yourself. You start to take in a whole lot of other considerations. And I always say to people, if you haven't thought about this, you need to go home, cut off the TV, turn off the music, let the kids go and play, let your wife go and shop, or let your husband go someplace, and sit in your house or your room in silence for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and think about, what is the purpose of life? Because when you start thinking about that question, you take the first steps, just like a child takes their first steps in life. You start taking the first steps to balancing and reconciling probably the most important question for the human being. Now, this is not a question that cannot be easily defined. It can be. If you turn to any one of the many dictionaries that would be available in an institution like this, or a public library, or available in your home or your office, the terminologies have been defined already. So it's not rocket scientists. It's not rocket science here. The word purpose generally means aim, objective, underlying reality, goal, determination, reason, and intent. Now that's very powerful. The word life, one of the most powerful words that explain life, that's unfathomable. You can't even really, when you say the word, you can't even think of really what it means. Existence. Now, how do we think about existence? Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? What's the depth to it? What's the diversity of it? How far is it? How many kinds of creatures does it involve? What kind of substances? Where? How? When? Who's behind it? How did it come about? Such a profound word, existence. The phenomena of the world, the term of a human being's existence before what we call death. Death. A word that none of us like to say unless it applies to someone or something else. We can manage to say someone has died. But we don't like to think, even for a moment, about someone saying that about us. Because that inevitable event, death, that is what you and I are on a downhill incline facing every single day. And babies die. Young people die. Old people die. Pretty women die. Handsome men. Rich people. Everyone faces death and will die. No matter what your philosophy is, what your preoccupation is, what your orientation is, who you think you are, where you think you're headed, what's your background, what's your family, what's your class, title, and structure, it doesn't matter. We're all headed towards death. And life is a gift that's been given to you and me, and we have to work out the variables between here and there. So when we speak about the purpose of life, for individuals, it's really a simple issue, but we need to take a look at it. Now, for individuals and for governments, the purpose of life is a little bit different. It takes upon a different set of dynamics. And I want to discuss with you from a socio-political point of view, because my background is sociology. And so it means I study behavior. I study the behavior of governments, civilizations, societies. I study the behavior of individuals. That study of behavior helps me to understand when something is here and you study the evolution of it, where it has come from, you get an understanding of where it is headed. And you start to see things to be almost the same. And when we talk about life, the life of a person, whether their life expectancy or their life anticipation, their life involvement, for all human beings, it's basically the same. Now, you might eat a little more fancy food than somebody that's living in Rwanda. You may live in a little more fancy house than someone that's living in Somalia or Afghanistan. You may have a little bit more choice of clothing when you open up your closet than someone that might be living in the Amazon. But when you're sick, sickness is the same, and your response to sickness is the same as those people that we just talked about. And when you have trauma in your life, tragedy in your life, you respond to it the same as those people. As a matter of fact, when people have been undergoing trauma on a daily basis, they deal with it better than what you and I will deal with it when it comes to us. So for individuals and governments, the purpose of life have a different manifestation, but I want to show you sort of like the generics of how they both function. One of our philosophers, historians, that some of you may have heard his name is Ibn Khaldun. He's called the father of history. He's the first one that interpreted history according to human behavior. He said that the cycle of life for individuals, the cycle of life for governments and civilizations are the same as the cycle of life for human beings. There's a gestation period, and then they're born. And after they're born, they begin to recognize, walk, speak. They start to adopt and realize their own personality. We're talking about individuals, we're talking about governments, societies. There's a stage of immaturity, and then there's a stage of adolescence, and then there's a stage of maturity. Then there's a stage in which most of their strengths, their faculties start coming into focus, and they reach an apex in their life. According to most philosophers, sociologists, psychologists, they say that this age is around 40, 45. For governments and societies, it's just about double that. Then they start to realizing and understanding the values and the dynamics of life a little bit more than they did when they were 30 and 20, because now they have reached the top of the hill and they start looking down. And as they start to decline into 50s and 60s, life starts to become more precious to them. And governments like Australia, like the United States of America, like the UK, and like some who are finished now, they start to realize also that they are not as powerful as they claim to have been. They start to see that they are unable to hold on to everything that they have taken. They start to see that the world does not revolve around them. They start to realize that they cannot exist without the collaboration and the cooperation of other individuals, of other governments, of other people. They start to realize this. And inevitably, individuals like governments soon become dependent upon others. They return back to a state where they were dependent before, and after being rich, independent, arrogant, powerful, selfish, self-centered, whatever, they start to becoming wise, giving, benevolent, understanding, compromising, mature, and looking at the anticipation of the inevitable, which is sickness and death. And one day, some of us in this room will remember that this has been said, that a great country like Australia, great country like America, where I'm from, great country like Great Britain, France, Germany, all these great countries, there's going to be a time, maybe not in our lifetime, when someone will speak about them with a historical, rhetorical mention, because they'll be over. And there'll be some other names here, like there are some other names here now. And we speak about others who were here, who thought they were powerful and would be here forever, rhetorical and historical. So we want to talk about the purpose of life as it applies to individuals and governments, because that allows us to understand the topic. I ask you to bear with me, because this is one of my favorite discussions. Not because I feel I treat it well or understand it well, but because it allows me as a human being to better understand how to negotiate my own life, how to appreciate my own life, how to appreciate those who are around me, those who may be dependent upon me or those whom I'm dependent upon, those who I interact with on a daily basis. Now, individuals within the spectrum of life, they look for certain things, no matter who they are. One, the most precious commodity for all human beings throughout the world is something which is called freedom. Freedom. And we find that any society that is able to promote itself, able to market itself, and convince other human beings that within their borders, in their land, in their government, freedom and liberty could be realized more so than anywhere else. It's just like being in McDonald's. Somehow or another, if you've got a problem, you don't have money, you don't know where to pay your bills, you had an argument with your husband or you had an argument with your wife, you lost your job, somehow or another when you see those golden arches, like Pavlov's salivating dog, you just start salivating. You start feeling a bit of relief. Or it might be Burger King. You can have it your own way. And if you got your children with you, your children, they start acting differently all of a sudden. Pulling and wanting you to pull over, and can we stop for a moment? And elderly people, they get up early in the morning, 7 o'clock, can you imagine? And they have no one to talk to. Their sons and daughters are graduates, they're off somewhere else, chasing their dreams, and the grandchildren, of course, are not there, and they have nothing to do but look out the window and watch television. But if McDonald's is down the street, they get up 7 o'clock in the morning, they get dressed, and they walk down to McDonald's, and they buy a cup of coffee and a cinnamon bun or egg McMuffin. And they sit there all morning watching children coming in and out and people smiling in colors, blue, yellow, red. Beautiful place, full of energy, and they sit there all day with just this cup of coffee and a cinnamon bun for a couple of hours because McDonald's has sold to the world a dream, and they belong to the McDonald's family. And governments have sold to you and I a dream, just like McDonald's, that if you stay here and you cooperate and you assimilate, you also will have freedom and liberty and all the things you've ever wanted. 2 chickens in every pot, 2 cars in every garage, and more than you need. Of course, and plenty of credit cards. But what they don't say, what is the price of this expensive freedom and liberty? The price of it is that you have in your refrigerators, you have in your closets, and you have in your stomach, and you have in your houses the share of other people's starvation. That's the price you pay. But because you're watching those commercials, you're constantly diverted from the reality that you have more than your share. But freedom and liberty is what everybody wants. At the end of the day, nobody really wants to fight. Nobody really wants war. Nobody wants trauma. Nobody wants tragedy. Not even the so-called terrorists. They don't really want war or terror. They are using something that we would think to be irrational, frustrated, anger, reprisals, to get, it's like reaching this way to scratch my ear. But because those who have more on their plate than they need, because they have pushed people into corners all over the world, those frustrated people have found there's nothing for them to do, and why not? Now, I don't justify, and you don't justify, those kinds of actions, because those actions are acts of frustration, and in some cases, madness. Nevertheless, my president says we are the distributors of freedom and democracy all over the world. We market freedom and democracy all over the world. And whoever has a problem, we're going to solve it our way. And there's only one menu, and that menu is stars and stripes. But the fundamental issue is that, whether arrogant or otherwise, human beings claim they want freedom and liberty. And why shouldn't we? No one wants to be a slave of anybody. No one wants to be imprisoned. Nobody wants to be oppressed. All human beings want peaceful coexistence. If I have a neighbor and we disagree and we argue and we throw stones at each other, or we fight, or we throw trash at each other, inevitably, what's needed here is somebody to arbitrate. Because at the end, if there is arbitration, you'll find out both of us really want the same thing. But someone has to arbitrate to let both of us hear the other. Because every human being, whomsoever they are, they really want peaceful coexistence. Because how can you enjoy your life if you've got somebody next door to you throwing rocks, cursing, shooting, threatening? So inevitably, we all need to find ways to have peaceful coexistence. All human beings want self-realization. Psychologists will tell you today, self-realization. That's the height of what every human being wants. Every human being wants to be realized, recognized. And think back for a moment, if you can, when you were in a crib. Now, there's a way that you can be hypnotized and you could do this. But if you can, think, when you were in a crib, you were maybe 18 months, maybe 12 months, maybe 9 months, and you weren't walking yet. And you heard people saying your name, but you didn't know it was your name they were saying. You just, when they looked at you, they were smiling and laughing, touching you, poking you. And every time they said your name and you kind of googly or did something nice, they stroked you or gave you something. So after a while, you started associating that sound with you. And psychologists say this is the first point of self-realization. And from that point, when you go to an interview, did you know that in a professional interviewer, they are told that in a 10-minute interview, they should say your name at least 7 times. Hi, Marsha. How you feel today? Hi, John. How's everything? John, let me ask you a question. Marsha, please let me ask you this question. They're told to say your name at least 7 or 8 times in that 10 minutes because it builds what's called an intimacy, a trust, a bond. Because everyone loves to hear their name. If there's anything that we will pay for and incline ourselves towards, it's our name. Because our name is the most sacred thing. We have nothing else to be recognized by except our names. That's why the prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, when you have a child, give them a good name. Because a good name starts them off with positivity about themselves, self-esteem. That's part of self-realization. Every human being wants to have the opportunity to achieve, to have, to own, to determine for themselves, for their families, whatever other human beings have the right to own and to achieve. This is all part of self-realization. Every human being has principles and values. Jeffrey Dahmer, he had some principles and values. Ask his mother. I listened to an interview with Jeffrey Dahmer's mother. How many people here know who Jeffrey Dahmer is? That's the guy he was eating other human beings. I think he consumed about 17 human beings. Now, that's not cannibalism now, because cannibals, they don't do this objectively. This is a man who's a civilized human being, who made a determination, who had a special fetish to trap, confine, sedate, kill, dismember, and then put them in a jar to be pickled, and then piece by piece over a period of 6 years devour them. And while he was doing that, he was going to work every day, kissing his mother and waving at people going down the street and sitting in McDonald's. But his mother spoke about him as if she couldn't imagine that her little baby boy did something like that. Because that's the nature of a mother, to forgive and not to believe that a human being could fall to that depth of disparity and insensitivity for other human beings. But he did. But even Jeffrey Dahmer had principles, and everyone here has principles. Now, you might call it religion, you might call it philosophy, you might call it belief, you might call it convictions. But you do have some principles. And one by one, if we sat down and talked about it, you'll find that every human being has a bottom line for what they believe to be right, wrong, sacred, the limit. That's it. And that's where all human beings need to sit down and talk and find out, where are our limits and where do we meet? All human beings have understanding about conformance and discipline. You may say to yourself, I do what I feel like doing. I do what I want to do, whenever I want to, however I want to. I'm free, I'm independent. I'm Australian, I'm American, I'm British. I don't have to listen to anybody. But you do. When you drove here tonight, I don't care what your philosophy is, what your religion is, what your orientation is, when you drove here tonight, you conformed to the traffic outside. You stopped at red lights, I think you did. You didn't drive on the freeway at any way you wanted to. When you came inside this building, you did reasonably queue up to come inside. So we are all conforming to things consciously, and we are also conforming to things subconsciously. Because some of you who have bladder problems, you're going to conform to human nature before this lecture is over. Every one of us is unconsciously conforming to human nature. Things that you don't even think about. Blinking, thinking, your heart beating, your liver functioning, your kidneys functioning, your lungs inhaling, exhaling, the salivation going on, process, swallowing, synapse taking place inside the brain, of which there's 26 million synapses per second that take place in the brain that creates what is called thought processes. Now, this happens without your even thinking about it. Things you cannot even control, but you are conforming. You follow disciplines. If you went to school, you're following disciplines. If you grew up in a house where there were some rules and some kind of order, you follow disciplines. You belong to a society, you pay taxes. There's discipline. If you belong to a religion and you have certain rituals, there are disciplines. When you go inside of a bank and you swipe your card or you step up, there's a discipline. So in everything we do as human beings, there is a discipline. And then there are things that complement us that we insist upon. Something simple like spices on our food. You know, food is not enough for us human beings. We want a little spice. Other people don't have food, but those who have food, that's not enough. They want spice. We want a different kind of clothing. It's not enough just to cover our body. We want a designer. And we pay for it. If you find a young man who's got on some Michael Jordan sneakers, trainers you might call it, he doesn't know that the same trainers that's got Michael Jordan's name on it were made in Hong Kong or the Philippines or Malaysia, and they cost only £8 or $8 to make. But when they put Michael Jordan's name on it, and all of a sudden it costs $150. Now, do you think that the Mickey Jordans that cost $8 or the Michael Jordans that cost $150 that was made in the same factory, do you think that because it's got Michael Jordan's name on it, you're going to jump higher? But this is how human beings are. We think to ourselves that the compliment that comes with life, that it increases the benefit. It doesn't. Water is water if it's dirty water or fresh water. You can't live without it. And food is food. And you will eat food out of a trash can if you're hungry enough. And it'll taste just like gourmet food. So here we are, human beings, seeking our freedom, liberty, peaceful coexistence, self-realization, principles and values, conformance and disciplines, things which complement. And I think we're sort of in agreement here. You might say, where's this guy leading us? Where's he leading us? Well, just hold on for a minute. If you came this far, you're already halfway out in the middle of the river. You might as well keep swimming. It's the same distance going back or forwards. Now, for governments, realization is almost the same, but in a different way. We want freedom, we want liberty. Governments want empowerment, and they want liberation. Every single government in this world evolved out of another government. No group of people just came together and found themselves somewhere and said, let's set up a government. No, they found themselves a part of another body. And they evolved, and differences came about, and eventually they said the differences are significant enough that we need our part and they need their part. And if they didn't settle those differences, they entered what was called like a civil war. And that civil war brought about independence for now two parts. Or like America and Great Britain. The daughter left the mother and landed somewhere else where they thought it was India, so they still call the people today Indians. You know, Christopher Columbus and those guys, when they got there, they found out that was not India. But the arrogance, they still call those people there Indians today. And they said they discovered America. Now, that's like my walking past your house and just walk inside and sit down. And you come home and ask me, what am I doing there? I said, well, I just discovered your home. So how do you discover a place where other people are living? That's a history lesson. But governments, nevertheless, they want empowerment. And they want liberation. After a certain point, they want to be liberated because that's how they are able to obtain what they call freedom from another government. They want sovereignty. It's not enough that we have an agreement. No. Once the daughter left from the mother, they said, hold up now. The king or the queen keep on asking for taxes, and they're not even here. They're not even giving us anything for these taxes. No, no. No taxation without representation. So they said, that's it. 1776, it was history. America became an independent country, and British had to accept it. And then we could name 15 countries and how they have evolved the same way. Governments, no matter how powerful they are, even my president, he talks like he's on his ranch. Like America is the best thing going since water. But America cannot exist as a country without the raw materials that it exploits from others. It cannot. It cannot exist without the immigrants that come to its shores and work like dogs and slaves for the pennies, for the dream. It could not exist. America, in all of its greatness, it could not exist without the cooperation and collaboration of other fellow governments. And all countries, no matter who they are, they seek independence. No country wants to be dependent upon another country. Have you ever heard of a country that is willing to accept the dependence on another country perpetually? No. Everyone wants inevitably to become independent and sovereign. Every country has its own constitution and laws. Just like you conform, countries conform. Because without constitutions and laws, what would it be? There would be anarchy. There has to be law. We have to respect law. Law brings about discipline. Law brings about definition. Law brings about order. And countries inevitably set up institutions based on the guidelines of its constitution to provide services and to regulate its citizens. And countries have to have courts to adjudicate differences, problems, issues, conflicts. And countries, societies have their own culture, their own set of ethics, their social-political ethos, it's called. And countries, societies seek to take their culture, their ethos, their social-political dynamics, their values, and they seek to inevitably dominate other countries, and now, using the terminology globalism, seek to dominate the entire world. Let me give you this idea. Can you imagine that today, the President of the United States, and I can talk about my president, because I'm grateful to be an American, and don't blame me, it's not my fault. I'm grateful to be an American because I was born sort of like in the bottom of the barrel, you can call it. But by the grace of God, being an American allowed me, like other Americans, to make some determinations that allowed me to earn a master's degree, to travel all over the world, to be standing here in front of you, and to have a passport that allows me to move anywhere I want to move. And I take that with full responsibility. And I handle it with responsibility. And I do have a right that if I think that my country is wrong, if I think that my president is wrong, if I think that the policies are wrong, I have the right and the responsibility as an American to say it's wrong. Well, if I had a different citizenship and a different president, I may not be able to say anything at all. So I'm grateful that God has given me this ability to speak my mind, and I do so with full responsibility. Now, when a country, a society, gets to the point where they believe that they have a right to dominate the world in spite of other people's values, to dominate with their products, with their services, with their flag, with their culture, with their language, with their values, with their immorality. This is a sign that this country has become insensitive, has become blind, and it is headed towards decline. It is headed towards decline. And I believe, I'm not making any predictions because I can't, but I think that someone could have spoke to us in 1970 and said that in 15 years, the Soviet Union would be over. But in 1970, nobody said that. Nobody even predicted it. But in 1985, or thereabouts, what happened? The boogeyman, the Soviet Union, the boogeyman, suddenly is just gone. A different name, a different currency. They were the boogeyman, but now they're in bed with their adversaries, sleeping with their heads on different pillows, of course. Who would have predicted that? And so who would think or predict that the United States of America, it may have a different name in 15 or 20 years? They may have to negotiate and create a different name. Who would have thought that all these countries that are part of the European Union would have a need to create a new name? Because their independent names and their independent currencies and their independent GMP was no longer valuable enough to be independent. And this is the way the world is moving towards globalism. But I was going to tell you that my president has just been named 3 years ago. He's got a new name. He's called the Commander-in-Chief of Outer Space. Can you imagine that? They sent so many satellites out of space, and they found nobody's out there except them. So they said we have to protect the frontiers of space. And so to do that, they have set up a new command post in space. And the President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief of Outer Space. I wonder if he'll get a chance to examine the troops out there. Now, inevitably, both individuals and governments are subject to demise, depreciation, and termination. Is anybody in this room here who would disagree that at some time and place in the near or distant future, everyone in this room here is going to be a ghost? A ghost. That means a memory. Something written, spoken about, documented, remembered. I don't care who you are, that's the case. And that's what we have all in common between life and death. In a verse of a book, a scripture called the Quran, that I would suggest every human being take a chance to read. If you can't read it all, read a verse, read a chapter of it. I mean, why not? You watch TV, you got 100, and if you got cable, you got 700 something channels, including those adult channels. If you got a computer, you're surfing the web. But then go to Google or Giggle, whatever search engine you got, and just put in the word Quran. Q-U-R-A-A-N. Yeah, Quran. Just put it in there. I dare you. I'm not telling you to put it in there because of religious purposes. Just put the word Quran in there and see how many hits that you get down there. See how many. And then just click one and just listen. Listen to the Quran. If it's in Arabic, you won't understand it, but just listen to it. And then ask for a translation, then read it. Well, in one of the chapters of the Quran, this is a book of 6,626 verses, 114 chapters, that was revealed to a man called Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, who himself claimed to be a prophet of God, like Jesus, like Moses, like Abraham, like David, like Solomon. He claimed to be a prophet. And we believe, as Muslims, that he was a prophet. We believe that this Quran was, in fact, revealed to him. This is what our belief is. You don't have to believe that, but we do. In this book, among other things that I'm going to tell you about this book, there's a verse that says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Says, glory be to the one in whose hands, whose power there is all the dominion of the heavens and the earth that you and I cannot even imagine. It's established that there is a power, there is a mind, there is an intelligence, there is an authority, there is a sovereignty behind this, what we call the creation. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And that power and that sovereignty has all absolute power. Not humans, not governments, individuals or collectively, past, present, future, nothing. We're just sophisticated sperm drops. That's all we are. Sophisticated. But that's where we started out. And in the end, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, that's all we'll be. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ. It is that authority, that power, it is that mind, that intelligence that has created the heavens and the earth and everything in it, and created death for the humans before giving them life. Think about that. Death was conferred upon us before we were even given life. It was already there, inescapable. When you came into life, you carried with you the imprint on your DNA. You gotta die. That's a ticket that comes with the package. Life, death. But in this particular verse, we usually as humans say life, death, because we're living looking at death, even though we ignore it. But in this verse, it switches it because the one who has given the life says, death, we give you as a gift life. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. In order to see which one of you will be the best in their behavior and in their conduct or their responses. Now that verse gives us the premise of our discussion. That the purpose of life, this small little like that's all it is. We think of it as days, weeks, months, years. We call some of us, what do they call a person who's 100 years old, we call them? A centenarian or something, what's that terminology? Somebody who's 80 years old, we give them different names, but it's just like that. And if you're 60 today, or in my case, 59 in 3 days. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, huh? See, think back. Think back when you were 15 years old, 12 years old, when you were just playing around in the schoolyard at home, doing this and that. You had no problems, and you're thinking about life and all the things you want to do and what you want to be and what you're going to achieve, and your brothers and your sisters and your mother and your father and your house, and no responsibilities, no rent, no bills, no nothing. Think about it. When was it? It was just yesterday. For me, it was just yesterday. Just like that. Where has the time went? What has happened? And now, today, everyone will agree. It seems like the sun rises and sets, and the day is just going like this. You can't even say, what happened? What's today? I said, today is Tuesday. So, Tuesday, brother, this is Thursday. I said, what happened? It's time. Because time is nothing but a capsule. Time is nothing but a drop of water on the windowsill, and the sun comes, it's gone. That's time. And that's what you and I have been given. We've been given time. And what you're going to do with this here time. No one, no group has come into being on their own. Is anybody here whatever philosophy that you have, who can say that, well, I came into being on my own? No, you didn't come into being on your own. You didn't decide to come here. You didn't decide to even be here in this life. You were brought into life. You were conceived by your mother. And if some of you think that you were born by some type of immaculate conception, or even you came through some hallway or something, and even test tube babies, even those babies that are born when people are, those mommy families, you know what I'm talking about. The daddy families who are buying the sperm off the internet and, you know, to have their own nuclear family. Still, they come into life not by their own determination. Nor can they obtain or harness the resources which they require on their own. You can't obtain what you need by yourself. Every human being needs another human being. Psychologists will tell you and I that a human being could be given everything, and they have tried it, they have done it. They have taken a human being and asked them, what do you want? They said, I want a house. They give it to them. Say, I want a car. They give it to them. What else do you want? I want furniture. What else do you want? I want money. They give it to them. I want all the things. I want computers. I want stereo. I want wall-to-wall. I want Wi-Fi. I want everything. They give it to them. But then put them in that house and leave them by themselves and say, you can have all of this, but you have to be by yourself. And the person says, I don't care. I'll be by myself. Well, they found out that after 10 or 12 days, the person starts getting lonely. They won't make a phone call. But the agreement is that no contact. So they say, okay. After 6 or 7 days, they start getting a little depressed. They want to see somebody. They want to look out a window and see if they can wave at somebody or something. But they made an agreement. No contact. After another week or two, the person starts getting detached. After another week or so, the person starts becoming severely depressed. And within 30 days to 60 days, the person becomes catatonic. That means they have become virtually mad. Their whole systems have broken down only from loneliness. So the human being, even if they had everything in the world, without another human being to talk to, they will go mad. And eventually they will die. From what? We call it heartbreak. Loneliness. No one has complete determination or power over themselves or others. For example, no one here can stop thinking. No one here can stop blinking. No one here can stop their bodily functions. No one here can stop the elements. No one here can stop the immutable laws. No one can reverse the dynamics of time and age. Therefore, all of us are subject to and subordinate in some way, shape, or form. I say to you that if we think about the heavens and the earth, let's think about it for a moment. Let's go macro, and then we go micro. Let's go macro for a moment. Let's go out. The earth is the third planet among, they said, 9 planets. I think they just discovered another planet. In our solar system, the earth is the third planet from the sun. And how many miles are we from the sun? Is it 93 million miles or something like that? And the earth is the only planet that has the ecosystems to sustain life. It's the only one. Because if we go to the left, Mercury, it's too hot. We go to the right, Mars, it's too cold. The earth has the only ecosystems that support what we call life. And if there is other human beings or other higher forms of life on some other planets, only Steven Spielberg knows about it. Or that station that comes on, what's that program that comes on with that, about the aliens? Just in case you don't know it, this is all fiction. And our solar system has a sun, which is a star. And our solar system is dependent upon the energy of that star. It's called the sun. Yet our sun, with all of its brightness and power, it is one of the smaller stars in the Milky Way. Did you know that? One of the smallest. One of the smaller stars in the Milky Way. And the Milky Way itself has 56 billion stars like our sun. And the Milky Way, as a galaxy, is only one of the smaller galaxies in a nebula. Can you imagine this? And a nebula is made up of trillions of galaxies like our galaxy. And a nebula is only one cluster that we have been able to identify. And Mr. Hubble said, you know Mr. Hubble, he said that he sent out a light 17 years ago. Now light travels at what speed? 86 million miles per second? Okay, add with me. He said that he sent out some signals 17 years ago from his telescope. And in 17 years, it has not hit an object in space and bounced back. Now you measure 86 million miles per second times 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours times 365 days times 17 years. So where's that light right now? It is still traveling through space where there is order, where there is space, where there is time, where there is dimension, where there is measurement, where there is design, and where there is the evidence of intelligence. Yet that's beyond us. You would agree. That's beyond us. Now let's go inside, micro. The Quran makes a statement, verily, we have created everything from water. That's what the Creator said in the Quran 1,400 years ago, nearly 1,500 years ago, that every living thing has been created from water. What has been discovered by science today? That everything has in it the basis of water. And what is water? H2O. It forms gas. The universe is a form of gas. And everything is from that. From the smallest thing we can get to, water is there. And inside of a drop of water now, we can go all the way to what is called now, they went past the molecule, past the atom. Now they went into what's called the quark. Can't even hardly say that, the quark. This is a new dimension of measurement. Quark. Now they got micro quark. All the way down to the DNA. Now they can take a piece of your hair and they can find out everything about you through the DNA map. They call it the genetic map. Yet from the micro all the way to the macro, there is what? Dimension, measurement, time, space. Intelligence. It suggests that there is a designer, a sustainer, because how is all of this being sustained? How is it being sustained? It suggests that there is also a controller. It suggests that there is a power, a supreme power. There's a higher knowledge. There's an ultimate source of accountability. To think otherwise would be to be absurd, impractical, arrogant, or to the point of ignorance. We all seek careers, undertakings, projects, marriage, education. We enter contracts, we make commitments, which we look for results. I mean, most of us do. We expect consequences, rewards, benefits, accounts payable and receivable. In every company, there's a manager or an owner. In every government, there's a king or a sovereign. In every family, there are parents, at least there used to be. One of whom is ultimately responsible. Then how can we think that this complex and sophisticated universe, this earth, and all of the ecosystems, and all of the creatures, which are countless, how could they be the result of disorder and unaccountability? How could we think like that? There is a purpose in life. There is a reason in life. There is a responsibility, and there most certainly is accountability, and that only stands to reason. Now, all of this rhetoric was to establish in everyone's mind that we're all on the same page. I know we're all on the same planet, and we're all here. But we want to be on the same page that there is a reason. There is accountability and there is responsibility that all of us as the human family, we need to think about that we have reciprocal responsibilities to each other, and also there is a reciprocal responsibility that we have towards a creator. Now you call it what you want. Call it life force, call it power, call it supreme mind, call it God, call it the creator. Nevertheless, all those names would be proper to describe the one, the power, the creator, the force that sustains, that controls, that designs, that is responsible, and that has given to you and I this gift. And you and I, all of us, we are beneficiaries. That's what we are. Human beings, we are beneficiaries. And we are benefiting from something that we did not pay for. You didn't pay for anything. You didn't pay for your eyes. And you think about the human camera. You could not produce it. If there was any instrument in this world that humans would want to create, it would be the eyes. They cannot. If there's anything that human beings would want to create, it would be a heart. Once it starts pumping, just go reach and get one off the shelf and put it in your chest. It doesn't work. The DNA doesn't allow it to work. The root, what's it, the Jarvik heart, or the Kubrick heart, they all work for a while, but after a while the chest rejects it. Because the body realizes there's a signal inside the body that something foreign is inside the body, and it just starts pushing it out. Because the Creator has not given you or I the ability to have two hearts. You can put something in there for a while, it'll work for a little while. The person who has lived the longest with a reconstructed heart is 13 years. 13 years of agony. Agony, and 17,000 pounds a month to sustain it. You think about that. And if there was something else that we would want to have a brain. So when a person is brain dead, just to take that out and put another one in there. Like you do a computer. But it doesn't happen. Because we have been given what we have been given, and it is already written how long, how much. And when it's over, it's over. You can swap hearts and body parts and donate this and wait on this one and wait on that one. But you're not going to avoid death if everything is brand new. And that's a fact. You and I are beneficiaries. And therefore there has to be, where there's a beneficiary, there has to be what? A benefactor. Someone has given us this gift. This moment of life. This opportunity to have, to see, to benefit, to feel, to speak, to interact, to stand, to think, to have, to own, to teach, to learn, to have posterity, to leave a legacy. Who has given us this gift? Don't tell me your mother and father gave it to you. Who gave it to them? No, a benefactor, a supreme benefactor. There is an owner, in fact, that controls, sustains everything in the heavens and the earth. That owner has given to you and me more position than we have been given by anyone else. That owner has given us life, with all of its tremendous benefits, of which is worth more than £1 billion. If I said to you, I have a company and we're just buying hearts. We're buying hearts, we're collecting hearts. And we're paying $1 million a heart. And we just like to know how many people here would like to just leave their heart to us right now. We can do the operation tomorrow, and your family will be the beneficiaries, and we give them £1 million. How many people here would like to volunteer for this company? We got the money. It's in the bank. We're buying hearts. No takers. If I said to you that there's a house that every one of you can have, no mortgage, 4 bedrooms, that's what you need? Good, no problem. Nice neighborhood, no problem. Fully furnished, no problem. Fully paid for, no problem. One condition. You move into the house, and 5 times a day we want you to make a phone call. And the phone is already in the house. Just 5 times a day, call up the company who gave you the house and just say, thank you very much. That's it. Just call up. 7 o'clock in the morning, you make one call. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you make another call. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you make another call. Sunset, you make another call. And before you go to bed, you make another call. Take about 5 minutes. Just say, thank you very much. I'm just checking in. The house is beautiful. And there's no rent. No rent. Just call in on a regular basis and be grateful. And take care of the house. And take care of the house. And if somebody comes by and they just want to spend the night, they're hungry, give them whatever they need and let them keep going. Is that reasonable? How many people say that's reasonable? See? Everybody. There's no trick here. I'm not trying to trick anybody into anything. This is not a game show. I'm not going to say, come on down. I'm trying to basically establish that human beings should be motivated to be grateful if they are given something that they have not paid for and that they don't have to pay for. Well, that house I'm speaking about is not a building. That house is you. That's you and me. Because the personality that's talking to you is inside of a body. That personality is housed. The you inside of that body, that's the real you. Because when you die, the body has died, but the personality has been wrapped up and is responsible. Before you came inside of that body, it had a value. It had an essence. And your DNA was written on it already. And that's why there are no 2 human beings that are exactly alike. Not quintuplets, not sextuplets, not anyone. Even when they clone them, they're not the same. And what I'm saying to you and myself is that we have to be grateful for the life that we have been given, because we are beneficiaries. You have been given this life without having to pay for it. Don't you think that it is reasonable to ask for the same conditions? If the creator of the heavens and earth, the benefactor that has given us all of this, the water, the air, our eyes, our thinking, our ability, the kidneys, our hearts, our ability to think, has given us our families, have given us the ability to express ourselves, given us our money, jobs, food, sustenance, clothing, dignity, freedom, honor, integrity, a chance at life, the gift, has given this to us, don't you think that it is reasonable for that creator, that benefactor, to say to you and I that we should recognize, we should conform, and that we should pay tribute? I said three things. I said, first, recognize. Is that correct? How many people think it is reasonable that we should recognize this benefactor? How many people think that if that benefactor has laid out for us certain principles of decency, dignity, honor, justice, fairness, equity between other human beings, that we should also conform to that? How many people would agree to that? And then how many people would also agree that if you've been given all of this and the only tribute that you're asked for is just to recognize and to give thanks or praise or worship at certain given times and places? Now the creator, the benefactor, doesn't need air, doesn't need water, doesn't need money, doesn't need anything from you at all, has just given that condition. Pay tribute, praise, thanks, be decent, share, be peaceful, be dignified, be honorable, be equitable, obey the law, be a good citizen, be a good person, be clement, be sensitive, be charitable. Whether you say the 10 commandments or the 50 commandments, do you think that this form of tribute is reasonable? Well, this is the purpose of life, to come to that conclusion. If we all as human beings came at least to that conclusion, this is not necessarily a religious conclusion. For me it is. It might not be for you. It might be a philosophical one. It might be a practical one, a logical one, a rational one, a scientific one, a dialectical one. But it's all the same if we all agree. If we all agree as human beings, if we reach the same point, we can call it what we want. That is the purpose of life. And if we all recognize that when we leave this room, we will become a better human being. Because we will see our neighbors differently. We will see the people that we employ differently. If you're a teacher, you'll see your students differently. You're a parent, you're going to see your children differently. If you're a child, you will see your parents, your family members differently. If you're white, you will see black people differently. And if you're black or brown, you will see white or yellow people differently. And if you're a man, you start to see women differently. And if you're a woman, you see men differently. And if you're not married, you start to see marriage as an institution differently. Why? Because you start examining things from a point of its purpose, its intent, its benefit. And we're all people of self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't feel bad about using others or being used as long as no one is being abused, isn't it? I don't mind being used or using you as long as there is no abuse. Because that's what life is about. Reciprocation, give and take, respect, honor, decency, toleration, patience. And so there's a statement. There's a statement that we make, and it's called, there is none to be recognized, none to be conformed, none to give tribute to except the Creator, the benefactor. That's a simple statement. Now you can make it in your heart, you can make it in your mind. You can say it as a religious or philosophical statement, but nevertheless, you got to come to grips within yourself if there is a benefactor, and I'm a beneficiary, and I have received this gift of life and everything that's in it. I should recognize, I should conform, and I should give some form of tribute. And I ask, how many people would agree that there is no one more worthy to recognize, to conform to, no one more worthy to give tribute to than that benefactor. How many people would agree to that? You see. Now there are people agreeing to this that are not Muslims. And I'm asking the Muslims, when I ask this question, you keep your hands down. Because you have, from a religious point of view, accepted that. And I'm not asking this from a religious point of view. I'm asking it from human being to human being. So I ask the question again. How many people in this room would accept that as a beneficiary, I should recognize that benefactor, I should conform reasonably to that benefactor, and I should give some form of tribute to that benefactor for what that benefactor has given me in this gift of life? How many people would accept that? The Muslims, please, hold your hands down. You see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. 25 or 26 maybe people who are non-Muslims who have accepted the statement that La ilaha illallah. Now, you say, wait a minute, I didn't say that now. So I don't even know what that means. Okay, let's just take the mystique out of it. Let's take the mystique out of it. You see, when you go to a doctor and he examines you, after he examines you, he makes a diagnosis. After that, he comes up with a prognosis. He explains to you what he thinks the situation is. After that, he writes a prescription, doesn't he? Doesn't he? Is anybody here that's a medical doctor? Is anybody here that's a medical doctor? Is anybody here that's a pharmacist? Chemist, you call it here, I think, maybe. There it is. So, after that doctor gives you a treatment plan, he writes out a prescription, even if you don't need anything. If nothing wrong with you, he's going to still write out a prescription. You've never been to a doctor, at the end, he didn't write something. He writes out a prescription, and he uses on that prescription what's called pharmaceutical language. What is the pharmaceutical language? The student of pharmacy, what is it?
It's a way to communicate between the doctor and myself, but when the patient doesn't understand what
Ha! That language is Latin, isn't it? See? The chosen language of pharmacology is Latin. And as he very aptly put it, it's a way that the doctor communicates with the pharmacist in which the patient would not know because it is a special relationship. He writes out a prescription. That pharmacist reads it, interprets it, and then gives it with a prescription drug or a generic one. Is that correct? Then he puts on the bottle, the pharmacist, the chemist. Take this after every meal, 3 times a day, so something. Then there's going to be a pharmaceutical name, which can be identified with that, with contraindications on it, right? Well, what I just spoke to you about, you accept it. Because as human beings, it's rational, it's reasonable, it's practical. It's not religious. But then I gave it to you in the language. You said, wait, hold it now. Well, La ilaha illallah is a statement that means there is none to be recognized. Nothing to be, no one to be conformed to. No one to pay tribute to except the benefactor, the creator. That's all it means. And there are 1.5 billion people in the world, Chinese, Egyptian, African, Asian, German, French, American, Canadian, Australian, Indonesian, Malaysian, South African. Anywhere there are human beings, there is some of those human beings that say La ilaha illallah. 1.5 billion people in the world. 1 out of every 5 people openly say, La ilaha illallah. And La ilaha illallah means that there's none to be recognized, no one to conform to, no one to pay tribute to except the benefactor, that supreme power, the one that has given us this gift of life. You say Almighty God, you say the Creator, we say Allah. Doesn't matter. All those are proper names. The bottom line is, when you establish your relationship with that benefactor, you start to become a different human being. Because now there are some rules. There's a rule between you and that benefactor which you need to look into. There is a relationship there in case you don't know it. When a man gets married, this beautiful woman he always wanted to marry, or the lady, she gets married to this handsome man she always wanted to marry. Well, after they throw the rice and, you know, and eat the cake and split the cake and go off on their honeymoon or honey sun, or if it lasts for 3 days or 7 days or whatever it is, at a certain point, they start looking at each other. You know, the lady, like, what do they say? Where's the beef? You know that commercial. The woman, she want to know this guy's still sleeping in the bed every day. He ain't getting up. So what's going on? I mean, the honeymoon is over, sweetheart. I mean, it's like the promises that you made, you know, the bread and butter on the table, all these, you know, these things we talked about, you know, the house and the car and the kids and, you know, I mean, what's going on? Why? Because we have a right to expect that from this relationship there are some reciprocal responsibilities. And the Creator, the benefactor, has a right that between you and the Creator there are some reciprocal responsibilities. You have been given, we have been given, and we also should be fulfilling our end of it. And what can we do except recognize? And what can we do except conform? And what can we do except be grateful as human beings? That's all we can do. When you accept that, you start to develop a responsibility of performance, quality assurance, fulfillment between you and that Creator, you and that benefactor. It's like when you get a house, you start to polishing and cleaning that house and clipping the hedges and mowing the lawn and doing all kind of things that everybody do in a new house, right or wrong. You get that brand new car, all of a sudden you out washing it every day, vacuuming. But if you got an old car, you don't be washing it at all. See, it's a human being. Because it should be reciprocation. Then there is also the issue of how does this feeling that you have, these principles that you have, how does it affect your relationship with other human beings? Because if you say to me that you got a relationship with God or a benefactor or a Creator, but it doesn't reflect your relationship with human beings, I say to you that you need to re-examine that relationship. Because it's the relationship that you got with the Creator, the relationship you got with a benefactor, the relationship you got with the bank doesn't allow you to get along with your neighbors. You need to look for a different neighborhood. You need to think about a different life. Because when you have a good relationship, a sound relationship, a fruitful relationship with your benefactor, with God, with the Creator, with yourself, it should reflect sound relationship and beneficial relationships with whom? Other human beings. When you find a human being that is insensitive, angry, insensitive, transgressing, cursing, having nothing good to say, we should feel bad about that person because they cannot feel very good about themselves. And they cannot have a fruitful relationship with or even recognize a Creator. So the purpose of life is for you and I to use this information to develop a fruitful, beneficial, strong, comprehensive relationship with our benefactor, our Creator, and through that to recognize what laws, what principles, what covenants, what sensitivities, What virtues, what obligations do we have as human beings to respect each other and to reciprocate to each other, and how that goes into social reciprocation and values. Dear brothers and sisters and guests, such is the purpose of life, to recognize that there's a source and an ultimate power that has authored the entire creation, to show our gratitude to that creator and owner for the many resources which we have been provided, to conform to the rules of decency, morality, and what is known to have been legislated by that sovereign benefactor, to establish a clear relationship of accountability with that creator and that benefactor, to subsequently adopt a posture of worship, obedience, and tribute, to do all that is necessary to morally interact with all other human beings and creatures so as to develop harmony, peaceful coexistence, mutual benefit, and decency. And finally, to anticipate a final meeting and an assessment with that sovereign. Because one day, if you have been given something and you are the beneficiary, you know that one day that account is going to be audited. No one should ever think that they've been given something and minimally it's not going to be audited. What you've been given, your life, is a gift, but there is going to be an audit. There's going to be a day, a time, when all the accounts will be balanced out. And everyone here that is a business person knows what a balance sheet is. You know at the end of the year, you've got to balance things out with the government. You know you got to work things out with your wife or your husband. You got to work things out with your neighbor, with your fellow human beings. And inevitably, before you die, you want to work things out with God. Because if you don't, inevitably, even if you didn't even believe in the benefactor, if you're not keeping account, you know that the supreme intelligence of that benefactor has been keeping account. Kelvin said, what about in Saudi Arabia where women are not allowed to drive? That's a particular situation. I'm going to express it from a point of Saudi Arabia, not from a point of Islam. Okay? Just from Saudi Arabia point of view. The Mufti, meaning the head of the Supreme Court in Saudi Arabia, looked at a special problem. And the problem had to do with whether women, whether there was an ultimate benefit for them to drive or whether there was an ultimate liability for them to drive. This is how it was examined. Not whether they should drive or they could drive, whether they have a right to drive or have or whatever. It was looked at from this perspective. And they determined that this country is huge. In many cases, from one city to another is desert. Desert. Dark places. And sometimes a woman by herself driving would get a flat tire. Something would happen to the car with dysfunction or whatever. And she's out in the middle of nowhere with nobody to do what? A stranger comes along. Now when that stranger comes along, it could be any kind of stranger. And now what happens, she is subject to being accosted, being raped, some harm. And if nothing happens, he changes her tire, he fixes, but some people roll by and see that man in her car or bending over or whatever, and they get back to her family and her town or her village. And because of their customs, it is said, we saw your mother, we saw your sister, we saw your wife on the road with a strange man. That woman's reputation may be damaged irreparably. Now, it is part of their custom that a woman's reputation means more than anything else. And so that Grand Mufti said that what we want to do is, if a woman wants to drive, she can get a license, but we want her husband or her brother or her family members to chauffeur her wherever she needs to go so that she would not be subject to this kind of situation. And that is the real issue. Now, not living there, a person wouldn't know. You would think that, well, they can't drive. That's not the case. We look more to the reputation than we do just simply allowing the woman to drive, and then what happens? They endanger themselves. And now we can see here in the UK, I mean, we can see here in the Western world, for instance, how many rapes do you think take place a week? not inside the home, but out when a woman is traveling from one point to another. How many rapes do you think take place? I'm a sociologist. If you don't know, I can give you the statistics. The statistics are, in the Western world, that there are 496 rapes that take place every week of women who are by themselves and they are accosted or they are raped or taken advantage of simply because they're by themselves. Now, I'm not suggesting that a law be enacted in the Western world like in Saudi Arabia. I'm saying that we need to look at that issue. Maybe we men in the Western world, we need to chauffeur our women. Well, that's another question, Calvin. I won't give you. The first part of the question is why at those specific times? Well, we didn't determine that. God, He determines when the sun comes up, when the sun goes down. God determines when a child is born. Why not 11 months? You know what I mean? The gestation period. Why 9 months inside the womb? Why not 11 months? This is not our determination. Why 24 hours in a day? That's not our determination. But through revelation and by inspiration and by determination by God, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, was told, these are the times of the prayer. Now, we Muslims, we don't fully understand why, but we have a rational understanding of it. But that's not why we do it. We do it from obedience. But there's a rational understanding of it. The Prophet, peace and blessing upon him, said, if one of you had a stream in front of your house, and you went down to that stream, you know, every 2 hours, 3 hours, and you washed yourself and bathed yourself in it, would there be any dirt on you at the end of the day? A certain amount of trust we have to give, okay? What is the Islamic system, what does it say about a woman being a head of a country or as a president? If, you see, a woman being the head of a country or a president, the Islamic position regarding that is that generally, the role of men is to protect. Generally. To represent, to protect outwardly. Just like you have never in history heard of an army, a country going to war against another country and they sent a female regiment. It has never happened. And there's a reason for that. With all the liberation that's going on, America didn't send no female regiment. Because generally speaking, answering the lady's question, they are equal in front of God, but they are not the same. You see, if a little rat ran across here right now, the woman would be... if it was a man, it's right or wrong. It's psychological. When a woman sees a rat or a mouse, she just a different response. A man, he wants to shoot it or kill it. So, the Creator who has made the human beings knows the psychology of women. He understands the anatomy of women. He understands the physiology of women, the sensitivities of women. And so, generally speaking, the Creator has said to us that men should be the maintainers, the protectors of women and children. But now, if there are no such men to do that, then yes, women can lead. They must. And so it's unfortunate if we find a Muslim country that don't have any capable men to lead. It's not because women cannot lead. It's just like, for instance, it's better for me to go out and earn for the family and for my wife. Not that she's relegated for the home, but if my wife got to go out and earn and I got to go out and earn, that means we're going to have latchkey kids. So what happened to the family? And what has happened to the family in the Western world? McDonald's, Burger King, what was the other? Pizza Hut and all those kind of places, they have destroyed the family. Because the family doesn't sit down anymore and have a meal together. They don't eat breakfast anymore. They don't eat dinner anymore. And there's no more extended family. It used to be the grandmother and the grandfather, the mother and the father and the children, The grandchildren sit all together, exchanging values, evaluating, what about the homework, what about this, what about that. Now, mom, she's out on her job. She's driving and she got her boss and her career, and daddy, he over with his career, and children got their career, and grandmother and granddaddy, they in an old age home. So the whole idea in Islam is that someone has to protect the sanctity of the home and the family. Now, we don't think that's the issue of just putting on an apron and being somewhere just in the kitchen cooking. Someone has to educate the children, maintain the values of the family, keep the timing, take care of the home, make sure that everything that we're working for is taken care of. And the woman is able to do that. I'll tell you this here. I never really appreciated my mother until I became at least 40 years old. Then I understood my mother. And I never really understood birth and what a woman has to go to until I saw 4 of my children born through cesarean section. I was there. So I understood the issue of a mother to a certain extent. And so what Islam says is that the challenge of a woman, the responsibility of a woman, the realm of a woman is to educate the future leaders of the world. And all prophets had mothers. And so this is what we say. Women have their stations and men have their stations, but generally the station of men is outward and the station of women is inwards, although that could be changed. I'll take one more question, I think, because we are beyond our time. It says, is it true between each prayer, if you have done or said anything bad, you are forgiven from each prayer? It all depends upon the level of what you've done. You know, you can't kill somebody and think that because you prayed you have been forgiven. You can't steal from somebody and think because you prayed that you are forgiven. And debts are not forgiven by praying. If you owe me money before you pray, after you finish praying, you still owe money. But if we're talking about things that you have done between yourself and God, words that you shouldn't have said, things that your eyes looked at you shouldn't have been looking at, places you went, things you may have done that only God knows, or prayer helps to strengthen you to correct certain things. You see, arrogance sometimes keeps us from saying, I'm sorry. But when you go and pray, you can be done with that arrogance, and you can go to a person and say, pardon me, I'm very sorry, would you please forgive me? So prayer is to develop humility. Prayer is to develop strength. And yes, from one prayer to the other, it helps because, think about it. If a person prays 5 times a day, and a person think about fornicating, committing adultery, or robbing a bank, and they just got finished praying the morning prayer, so they start planning this bank robbery. Or they call up the lady, or the lady call up the man. They want to meet together. So they said, where should we meet? Oh, well, let's meet after lunch. Well, lunchtime is door time now, prayer time. So, but she said, well, before we go have this little meeting that we're going to have, let's pray door first. Pray that. So, okay, we prayed. So then we had a meeting together. So where are we going from here? Well, we should go to your house or my house. Well, we got to pray that afternoon prayer now. So we pray the afternoon prayer. So where we going? We'll meet at your house. So what we going to do? We take a little drink and we start getting smooching and whatever. So, oh, well, it's a sunset prayer. No, it's not going to happen. So the whole issue of the prayer, the Prophet, the Quran says, Inna salata tanha an fahsha wal munkar. Is this correct? Verily, the prayer is a preventive deterrent against human tendencies towards doing what's wrong. And so the whole idea of the prayer is that nobody is registering that prayer except God. And in your own conscience, because your conscience is the best policeman. When you build up your conscience, you build up the best deterrent for anything in the world. You'll pay your debts. You'll honor your word. You'll speak well to your neighbors. You'll talk to your children correctly. You'll have better relationship with your wife. Why? Because in your mind you have developed morality. And the whole issue of prayer is morality and good behavior. The Prophet ﷺ said, verily I have been sent to perfect good manners and good behavior. So if a person prays all day and night, but you don't see no change in their morality, their prayers is not answered. It doesn't mean anything. Do you and I do, and at night standing in prayer for 4 or 5 hours at a time, and in the day fighting the battles, discharging the armies, giving the ahkam and the rulings, explaining the Quran, instructing the people in behavior. How could a man do all of that and stand 4 or 5 hours at night at one time? What kind of human being could that be? And let me tell you, after Christopher Columbus came back and claimed that land for King Ferdinand and Isabella, they sent more ships. And within 150 years, they destabilized, massacred, killed, liquidated, eliminated 89 million native Indians, as they called them, to take control of what they call the New World. So we got 56 and we got 89. You keep adding for me, please. How many? 487 million. That's 500 million people. They never defined any of these actions, any of these barbaric, tragic intrusions, criminal occupations, destabilizations, murder, and protracted crimes on humanity. They never called it what? Terrorism. It's unbelievable how a concept could be forced on the world with their eyes wide open, and all the lives, all the time that people go to church, read the Bible, talk to their priests, their leaders, themselves around the dinner table, pray to God with their eyes open or closed, and don't understand the Trinity, and they accept it, that it's simply a mystery that cannot be explained. The Islamic position regarding that is that generally, the role of men is to protect. Generally. To represent, to protect outwardly. Just like you have never in history heard of an army, a country going to war against another country and they sent a female regiment. It has never happened. And there's a reason for that. With all the liberation that's going on, America didn't send no female regiment. Because generally speaking, answering the lady's question, they are equal in front of God, but they are not the same. You see, if a little rat ran across here right now, the woman if it was a man, it's right or wrong. And they just got finished praying the morning prayer. So they start planning this bank robbery. Or they call up the lady, or the lady call up the man. They want to meet together. So they said, where should we meet? Oh, well, let's meet after lunch. Well, lunchtime is door time now, prayer time. But she said, well, before we go have this little meeting that we're going to have, let's pray door first. Pray that. So, okay, we prayed. So then we had a meeting together. So where are we going from here? Well, we should go to your house or my house. Well, we got to pray that afternoon prayer now. So we pray the afternoon prayer. So where we going? We'll meet at your house. So what we're going to do, we take a little drink and we start getting smooching and whatever. So, oh, well, it's a sunset prayer. No, it's not going to happen. So the whole issue of the prayer, the Prophet, the Quran says, Inna salata tanha an al-fahsha wal munkar. Is this correct? Verily, the prayer is a preventive deterrent against human tendencies towards doing what's wrong. And one day, she wake up and she puts on niqab, and she puts her full clothes on. No more lipstick, no more perfume. She doesn't talk to the men. She's not working anymore because she understands to keep her haya, to keep herself. She stays home and takes care of her home, and her husband says, "What's happened to you?" She says, "Yesterday I read an ayah in the Quran. I read the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and it made me cry and to think about my religion, and I'm not doing that no more." And so he said, "Then I don't want you. You have become extreme." So she have now become stranger. Alhamdulillah. If he leave her, we ask Allah to give her another stranger. The Muslim neighbor, the Muslim co-worker, the Muslim colleague, they are the ones that are blocking the way for people understanding Islam, because people are getting confused. They are confusing Muslims with Islam. And part of us uncovering the treasure sometimes means moving Muslims out of the way. Now that the treasure is open and plain and clear and uncovered for anyone to see, I ask, are there any non-Muslims here tonight that would like to inherit this treasure? La ilaha illallah.
أبتغيها مدحة طاغية تبهر البدر بليل محتلق راجيا منك إلهي رحمة تغسل الذنب وقد أمسيت لك أيها المؤمن